$900,000. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That is the exact amount that Richard Caldwell, a 54-year-old commercial real estate developer from Atlanta, wired to a woman he had never met in person. Over the course of 23 months, he sent 47 separate wire transfers. Each one made perfect sense at the time. Each one was backed by documents, video calls, and emotional conversations that felt more real than his own marriage ever did. The woman's name was Vanessa Moreau. She was an art curator. She was beautiful, intelligent, and deeply in love with him. She also didn't exist. This is a full story, step by step, of how it worked. And if you think you're too smart for this, that's exactly what Richard thought too. To understand how a man loses $900,000 to a stranger, you first need to understand who he was before the stranger found him. Richard Caldwell built his career from the ground up. Started in property management at 26, earned his broker's license at 30, and by 40, he was developing commercial properties across 3 states. His portfolio was worth north of $8 million. But here's the thing about men like Richard, and I'm talking directly to the guys watching this. Career success doesn't protect you from loneliness. In fact, it often guarantees it. His marriage to Catherine lasted 19 years. She left in 2021, took the house in Buckhead. Richard didn't fight it. He was barely home anyway. He moved into a high-rise condo downtown, told himself he was starting fresh. But starting fresh at 51 looks like eating takeout alone at 9 p.m. and scrolling through your phone until you fall asleep. His buddy Mark suggested online dating. Richard resisted for months. Then one Thursday night, he downloaded an app, not Tinder. He thought he was too old for that. He chose a premium international dating platform that marketed itself to professionals. Within 48 hours, he had a message from a woman named Vanessa Moreau. And that's where the story really begins. Vanessa's profile was immaculate. 41 years old. French father, American mother. Grew up between Lyon and Connecticut. Studied art history at the Sorbonne. Worked as a freelance curator for private collectors in Manhattan. Her photos showed a woman of quiet elegance. Dark hair, warm smile, always in galleries, cafes, European streets. Not overtly seductive. That's important. The best scam profiles don't look like models. They look like the woman you wish you'd married. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours. She asked about his childhood, his work, his divorce. She listened, and in a world where Richard felt invisible, being truly heard was more intoxicating than any physical attraction. Within 2 weeks, they were talking every day. Morning texts in French. She'd say bonjour, mon cœur, and late-night phone calls where she'd play classical music in the background while they talked. Here's what Richard didn't know. There was no one person on the other end. Vanessa was being operated by a team. Day shift, night shift. They had a shared document tracking every detail Richard revealed. His ex-wife's name, his favorite restaurant, his dog's name. Everything he said was logged, categorized, and weaponized. By week 6, they were saying, I love you. By week 8, Vanessa sent her first video call. And this is where the operation went from old-school catfishing to something far more sophisticated. The woman on the call looked exactly like the photos. She smiled. She laughed. She called him Rich, the nickname only his close friends used, which he'd mentioned in passing 3 weeks earlier. It was a deepfake, run in real time using AI face swap software, controlled by an operator who had spent weeks studying how the fake Vanessa should move, react, and speak. The voice was processed through an AI modulator tuned to a specific pitch and accent pattern. Richard had no idea. And why would he? In 2023, most people had never even heard the word deepfake. This man was a real estate developer, not a cybersecurity analyst. He saw a face. He heard a voice. He felt a connection. That was enough. The first 3 months cost Richard nothing but time. That was by design. Professional romance scammers don't ask for money early. Amateurs do. The operator behind Vanessa were running what's called a long cultivation, building an emotional debt so deep that when the ask finally comes, it doesn't feel like a request. It feels like an opportunity to prove your love. Month 4, Vanessa called Richard in tears. Her mother, Colette, had been hospitalized in Lyon, emergency surgery. Vanessa was flying to France immediately, but her accounts were frozen. Something about an international tax dispute between her French and American banks. She was panicking. She'd never asked anyone for money in her life. She didn't even ask Richard directly. She said, "I don't know what to do. I'm so scared." Richard offered. Of course he did. That's what good men do when someone they love is in crisis. He wired $12,000 that night. Vanessa sent him a photo of her at the hospital the next day. Sent a screenshot of a French medical bill. Sent a voice message crying, thanking him, telling him he was the only person she could count on. All fabricated. The hospital photo was stock imagery run through an AI editor to add realistic details. A French hospital wristband, a specific date on a whiteboard in the background. The medical bill was a template purchased on a dark web marketplace for $15. $12,000. Richard didn't think twice. And the operators behind Vanessa didn't celebrate. They simply moved to phase 2 because $12,000 was never the target. It was a test. He passed. Here's how they extracted $900,000 over the next 19 months. And I'm going to walk you through the actual mechanics because this is the part most people don't understand. They didn't ask for $900,000. They never asked for any single amount that would trigger Richard's rational brain. They used what behavioral psychologists call commitment escalation. Each request was slightly larger than the last, each one justified by a crisis that was slightly more urgent. Month 5, $18,000. Vanessa's tax dispute escalated. Her French lawyer needed a retainer. She sent Richard a PDF of the legal engagement letter, complete with fake law firm's letterhead, bar registration number, and a phone number that, if called, was answered by another member of the syndicate posing as a receptionist. Month 7, $35,000. An art collection she was curating was seized by customs. She needed to post a bond to release it. The profit from the collection sale would repay Richard 10 times over. She sent a customs document. It had official stamps. Month 9, $45,000. Her apartment in New York was being sold by a landlord. She needed a deposit on a new place immediately, or she'd be homeless. She sent a video walk through the apartment. A real listing she'd pulled from Zillow, narrated over with her AI-generated voice. Month 12, $85,000. The biggest ask yet. A joint investment opportunity. A gallery in Paris wanted to partner with her, but required a capital commitment. She framed it as their future. When we're finally together, this gallery will be our life rich. She sent a business plan, a projected P&L statement, a fake website for the gallery, complete with a history page, artist roster, and press mentions that link to AI-generated articles on clone news sites. Richard pulled $85,000 from his business line of credit, and every single time, every crisis, every ask, was followed by a deepfake video call where Vanessa looked into his eyes, cried, thanked him, told him she'd spend the rest of her life making it up to him. The technology didn't just make this possible. It made it undetectable to a man who was in love. Month 14 through 22. The request became almost routine. Medical bills, travel costs for her planned trip to Atlanta that kept getting delayed, lawyer fees, tax penalties, a sick cousin in Marseille. The counter climbed. $300,000, $500,000, $650,000. This is a psychological trap. After $200,000, Richard wasn't just supporting Vanessa. He was protecting his investment. Admitting it was fake would mean admitting he'd lost $200,000 to a lie. So he kept going. Each transfer wasn't just about her emergency. It was about making all the previous transfers make sense. Psychologists call this the sunk cost fallacy. Scammers call it the hook. By month 22, Richard had wired $897,400. Then Vanessa disappeared. It didn't happen all at once. First, the replies got slower. Then the video calls had technical issues. Then Vanessa said she was traveling in a remote part of France with bad reception. Then nothing. Richard called 3-4 times in one day. He sent 87 text messages over the next week. He called a French lawyer. The number was disconnected. He checked the gallery website. The domain had expired. He reverse searched Vanessa's photos and found them on a stock photography site. A Ukrainian model who had no idea her face had been stolen. The deep fake wasn't even her. The voice wasn't even her. The person Richard loved was a composite, assembled from stolen photos, AI-generated speech, forged documents, and emotional needs that Richard himself had revealed in their very first conversation. He sat in his condo in Atlanta, looked at his bank accounts, and realized he had $23,000 left. His business credit was destroyed. He owed the IRS back taxes on distributions he'd taken to fund the transfers. Richard Caldwell, a man who built an $8 million portfolio, was functionally broke, and he couldn't tell anyone, because the shame was worse than the money. When the FBI's IC3 division eventually investigated Richard's case, here's what they found. The operation was run out of a compound in Sihanoukville, Cambodia. 23 operators, most of them trafficking victims themselves, forced to run romance scams 14 hours a day. Vanessa was one of over 200 active personas being managed simultaneously. The technology stack included real-time deepfake video software, the same technology that can make a president say things he never said. AI voice cloning trained on 30 seconds of a real French-American woman's YouTube cooking video. A document forgery toolkit with templates for 14 different countries' legal and financial documents. And CRM software, customer relationship management, tracking every target's emotional state, financial capacity, and manipulation timeline. This wasn't a lonely person in a basement. This was an industry. The UN estimates that romance scam syndicates generated over $4.4 billion globally in the last year alone. Richard wasn't stupid. He was targeted. His dating profile told him he was wealthy, recently divorced, and emotionally available. That profile was their business plan. Richard went public with his story 14 months after Vanessa disappeared. He'd lost his condo. He'd moved into a rental in Marietta. He'd started the slow, humiliating process of rebuilding. He recovered $0 of the $900,000. That's the reality. Once crypto and international wires clear, the money is gone. Law enforcement can investigate, but recovery rates in romance fraud cases are under 4%. But Richard did something that matters more than money. He talked. He told his story to the FBI, to a support group, and eventually to a microphone. Here are the 5 red flags that Richard sees clearly now, and that every man watching this needs to burn into his memory. 1. She never met you in person, but always had a perfect excuse why. 2. Every crisis required your money, and the amounts kept growing. 3. The documents look perfect, too perfect. Real life is messy. Scam documents are clean. 4. The video calls had slight delays, odd lighting, and she never turned her head sharply. Classic deepfake limitations. 5. She mirrored everything you wanted. She wasn't a person. She was a reflection of your loneliness. $900,000. 23 months. 47 wire transfers. 0 meetings in person. And Richard isn't the exception. He's the average. The FBI reports that men between 40 and 65 lose more money to romance scams than any other demographic. Not because they're foolish, because they're successful, generous, and alone. If you're watching this and something feels familiar, if there's someone in your life who you've never met, who always needs money, who always has a crisis, I need you to stop right now and ask one question. What would this look like if it were a scam? If you can't answer that question with total confidence, you already know. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want the full story behind every scam we cover. And remember, knowing how the trick works is the only way to stop falling for it. This is Romance Scam Podcast. Stay sharp.